All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, one and all. Welcome. Thanks for joining. This is Shubham Pandit, and for next hour, we are digging into how EAM has stopped being just a maintenance system and become something a lot more strategic for asset-heavy business. Quick note, guys, we are recording, so you will get the link after, and please drop the questions in comment box throughout. Don't save it all for the end. The quick note, we have exclusive offer for today's LinkedIn Live attendees. As a thank you for joining us, we are offering an exclusive complimentary MRO AI assessment along with an opportunity to qualify for free proof of concept, available only to attendees for this live podcast. The registration link is pinned in the comments. This offer is valid only while the podcast is live. Once the session ends, the offer expires. So please don't miss this opportunity to explore how AI can transform your MRO operations. Claim your spot before the live session ends. So yeah, people, I got two great people from my side, uh, from very two different parts of the world. So I will let them introduce themselves. Rakesh, why don't you start with you?
Hey, thank you, Subham. Great opportunity. Thanks for organizing this. My name is Rakesh. I've been in the industry for the last 25 years. Uh, Spent my initial set of years almost 1.5 decades in the US, California. Then before that in the UK. Now I'm settled in Dubai. I basically am the executive vice president handling sales for Middle East and Europe for Vatantis. Over to Robert.
Hi, everyone. Robert Torrence here. I lead the North American market for Verdanis, really helping asset intensive organizations, specifically in energy and manufacturing, really solve data quality problems that sit underneath EAM and MRO investments. The challenge to finding the US market right now, it's really not a technology adoption. It's really US organizations having been invested in systems like SAP, Maximo, and predictive tools for years. Uh, the real issue is that most of them are built on top of a data foundation that was really never properly designed. That data foundation has now become the ceiling on everything that any company is trying to do within the US regarding AI. And we're going to talk about it today.
Thanks, Robert and Rakesh, for your introductions. So let me set some context for this podcast. So we still call it as enterprise asset management, but today's expectations go far beyond maintaining just an equipment. Companies expect EM systems to support reliability, inventory optimization, procurement efficiency, I would say workforce productivity, compliance, and the new term AI initiatives. Every company is just looking for AI initiatives and all. So, my quick question to Rakesh, what are companies expecting from EM today that they weren't expecting 5 years ago?
Yeah, thanks, Shubham. Enterprise asset management is a boardroom topic today, primarily because the shift of preventive maintenance to optimizing business performance through assets is the most important activity that is being discussed at the boardroom level, right? So the major shift or the paradigm shift that has actually happened is you have these large ERP systems, SAPs, Oracles of the world, who have been managing logistics and supply chain functions across the customers' various functions and enabling them to evolve. Uh, During the era of digital transformation, the ERP has basically come in with a lot of significant advantages, but it's still stuck to the basic operations of logistics and supply chain, right? There, as with the advent of AI and specifically with the advent of agentic AI, the requirement was there to build an intelligence layer on top of the ERP, where you could optimize the performance, business performance from the assets, right? So the assets should translate that into a performing asset where you could basically have the business performance controlled and monitored and adjusted, and also help reduce the overall cost of operations over the period of time. Now, this has become a boardroom level discussion, and people are struggling across the industry to find out how do I build that intelligence layer on top of the supply chain function.
So, Robert, what has been your experience from US market? How US companies are expecting EM today to work compared to 5 years ago?
Yeah, so Rakesh framed it very well. The expectation has really shifted from managing assets to more so optimizing business performance. I'd say the U.S. is experiencing the same shift, but with a slight twist. The expectations arrived before the capabilities did, unfortunately. And, US leadership is demanding AI driven outcomes on data foundations that were really built for eras that aren't in existence anymore. So, yes, the same shift, but with more pressure and, frankly, more disappointment when the investments don't deliver. That gap between expectation and execution is exactly where Verdantis does most of our work.
Yeah. So, Robert and Rakesh, for both of you, so is the problem in the software itself, or it is the process, or something deeper?
I'll go first here, actually, right? So technology is not the bottleneck, right? It is basically the data quality, governance, and the organization discipline, and including change management is the most important functions within the organization that has to help EAM platforms, derive the value that it is being invested for, right? So some of the large organizations don't fail because they have chosen the wrong software, right? Whether it is SAP, Maximo, Oracle, whatever it be the software, right? These are all capable platforms, right? But having said that, if the underlying asset hierarchy is incomplete, if the material master data contains duplicate parts, spare parts information, if the bombs are inaccurate, if the maintenance planners don't trust the information and use guesstimates, then even the best EM platform will be, cannot deliver the expected value. So that's the gap. There is a big gap there, right? That's my feedback. Over to you, Robert.
Well, Rakesh pointed to data quality and governance, and I won't disagree with that at all. But I will push back on the framing slightly. In the US, I believe we're seeing a third factor that really doesn't get enough attention, and it's really around organizational structure. Maintenance and procurement operate in separate silos with separate KPIs, separate budgets, separate paths of ownership. You can't have perfect data, but if the reliability team and the inventory manager aren't seeing the same objectives, the system still underperforms. The technology and the data might be ready, but the organizational chart isn't, quite frankly.
Yeah, I truly second both of you. Every organization wants predictive maintenance, inventory optimization, and both all of these should work by leveraging AI technology and all. But all of those depend on quality of I would say underlying asset or material data. So, Robert, how often do you discover in the US market that the reliability issue is actually a data issue?
Well, really more often than not. And the numbers that always surprise clients is how fast you find it. We've done diagnostics where within 48 hours of looking at the asset master and maintenance history, we've identified that roughly 30 to 40% of repeat failures trace back to wrong parts being specified. Not bad execution, but wrong parts. The technician did exactly what the system told him to do, but the system had bad information. That's a data problem dressed up as a maintenance problem. And it shows up in reliability metrics, really as if it were a people problem.
Yeah. Rakesh, like you have been in the same industry since like more than 20 years, as per my understanding, and like as per your knowledge, what are some common asset data problems you are seeing during ERP or EAM implementations?
As I mentioned to you, the asset hierarchy, the asset in. So let's start with asset inventory collection, right? Some of the biggest problems that we see is the fundamental data that is required to do for manipulation, for determining the right value of investment of the tool and the subsequent ROI for the remaining part of the year is basically derived from the right set of asset classification, asset inventory, asset management from a warehouse perspective or a storage perspective, right? So what really happens is, since there are process flaws and data quality issues that comes across with respect to multiple parts, spare parts being ordered with the same material code or with a different reference code, the ERP accept these items and basically the duplicates pile up. Now, since the duplicates pile up, the rest of the functions which is basically related to that particular asset, whether it's an equipment or a spare part or an asset for that matter, basically gets into a bigger data issue. And based on that particular inconsistent data, we basically try to understand the return of investment of the EM platform that we have invested from an asset maintenance and management perspective, and that never gets delivered. This is the actual truth. So one of the things that we as an offer Vedant this offers is we basically do a bookshop with the customer to understand the overall blueprint of how the data is being structured under the EAM umbrella, and we basically run a POC to collect the data, cleanse the data, push that particular data into our MRO 360 platform, and showcase where exactly they stand as on date today, and what are the operational improvements that they can absorb on a step by step basis.
Yeah. So Rakesh, tomorrow morning only I was having conversation with one of the Australian partners. They're working with big mining giants from Australia. Australia is one of the country with more number of mining industry companies are there in Australia. They're working with 90% of their clients are from mining industry. They're implementing some technology around predictive maintenance, inventory optimization, and one thing which he mentioned, he needs good data or quality data before implementing those technology. So my next question is on that only for both of you. Does poor master data directly impact inventory levels and maintenance cost?
I'll let Robert go first. Robert?
Well, you know, that's a, directly and immediately the damage compounds over time in a way that's really hard to unwind. Every purchasing decision made on bad data adds to the problem. Every safety stock calculation based on inflated historical demand makes it worse. By the time any organization decides to fix it, they're not dealing with the data problem. They're dealing with years of inventory decisions built on top of data problems. In some cases, the cost to remediate actually exceeds the original investment in the system itself, unfortunately.
Yeah. Shubham, fundamentally, if when you're running a manufacturing organization and when you're running multiple sites, multiple plants, multiple geos, and you're having geo expansion, I can quote the mining industry that you talked about, right? So the bread and butter of their revenue is basically continuous operation without any downtime. That's given. Everybody knows about that, right? But having said that, the unified data foundation platform, without the lack of a unified data foundation platform, the ERP and the ERP platforms basically has given the users that the advantage of creating multiple records. And if there is no intelligence layer on top of the ERP, unfortunately, there is duplicates being automatically injected in the system. Based on the duplicate injection, what happens is the data foundation gets disrupted and it basically gets into a very unclean format. Now, the unclean format is basically used by the top layer devices, which includes the intelligence layer for that matter, or for any other platforms, including AIAM for that matter, for preventive maintenance. That causes the complete confusion. Now, from a budgeting perspective, also, the unified data foundation layer is very important because imagine that you are ordering a spare part. Say it costs $380,000 per piece, right? If you don't have accurate data and if you order more number, that's actually cash sitting in the pile of inventory without any use. Now, when you actually do the budgeting for the next year and the subsequent year, you take that as a baseline and start budgeting it. Whereas the actual data that has been determined as the initial estimates was itself wrong, right? So that's how the problem here becomes a compounding problem if you don't have the right set of data foundation and the right set of data to operate it.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this, Rakesh. Quick note for those who joined our podcast late. We are offering an exclusive complimentary MRO AI assessment along with an opportunity to qualify for free proof of concept available only to the attendees of live podcast. Link is pinned in the comments. Offer is valid only while the podcast is live. Once the session ends, offer expires. Guys, don't miss opportunity to explore how AI can transform your MRO operations. Claim your spot before the live session ends. So, team, when people discuss AM, they often focus on assets, maintenance, inventory optimization. But every maintenance strategy, every inventory optimization strategy ultimately depends on having the right spare part available at the right time at the right place. So, Rakesh, why are MRO and EAM becoming inseparable conversations?
Um, Two reasons. One is the organizations want to understand the spending pattern and regulate the cost that is associated with the plan. Number one, primary reason. Secondary reason is typically the entire intelligence of before making a decision, which is analytics, right? So if I have to do analytics, if I have to do the right investments and also look at saving cost, right? I think the right set of investments needs to go in, and the a platform like MRO 360 has to give a complete visibility starting from the spare parts location, starting from a simple AI search, right, within that particular system where you can identify the parts across the plans that you have, and the spare part is actually thoroughly described well, so that any kind of obsolescence, any kind of spare part mismanagement can be avoided in the first place. So once you establish that spare part detail critically in a particular system, then you, along with the equipment criticality, which is an ABC analysis or an industry model analysis, you establish the fundamental blueprint of a plant in a digitized format, right? So that digitized format is what is required for organizations to grow into a new format where you can actually create digital twins. Now, why is digital twins important? Because digital twins are important because when you're going through an industry format or framework where you have multiple IoT devices, multiple technologies working along in the plant side, that has to be standardized, digitized, and it has to be taken into a digital format to manage in a much convenient fashion with the advent of agentic AI, right? So, by coming back, that organization of spare part management and equipment criticality has to be the fundamental blueprint that a platform has to provide with an utmost ease and convenience for information retrieval, which is not happening today in any of the ERP platforms as we speak.
True. Yeah. So next question is my favorite question. I would say a couple of months back, we were having early discussion with one of our clients, and inventory management stakeholder asked me this question. So I want you guys to answer this question as well. So what is more expensive, a spare part you don't have when production stops, or a spare part you have been carrying for 10 years that nobody needs?
I'll have Robert go first. Robert, I see a smile on his face. I know that's coming out from the his side.
You know, well, I'll say this. I'll say this. It really goes back to what I call, a shadow system problem. Spreadsheets, personal lists, phone calls. It really breeds a culture of hoarding. When planners don't, really trust the system, or they don't know what they have on hand, they really build, safety buffers, and none of that gets recorded anywhere. You end up with inventory in technicians' trucks, in their lockers, in the back corners of warehouses. It's completely visible to any EAM or CMMS system. So your system may show 20 units on hand, but you actually have 60, and nobody knows where the other 40 are. So it's really knowing what you have on hand and readily available. And, sometimes those issues arise, and no one knows what the heck to do. But we have solutions for that. Rakesh?
Yeah. So my view is that both of them are expensive, right? In its own way. For example, based on the industry that you're operating in, right? On the missing part, say for example, if there is a spare part which is missing, right? Typically, the refining network price downtime can be anywhere between 200 to $350,000 an hour, and an 18-hour, consider an 18-hour downtime, it's a $4 to $6 million production loss, right? Now add on top of that 3 or 4 major stockouts, which happens in a calendar year, right? Adding the overall amount to 12 to 18 million in exposure, right? When it consider the mining operations also. In the mining operations, the numbers are even higher, right? 250,000 to 400,000 an hour, roughly 5 million for an 18-hour shift or a production stoppage, right? So these numbers are on the missing part, right? On the other side, the part that you have carried on years, which is sitting and lying down in your inventory, the same refining network have almost close to 20 to 30 million in capital sitting in obsolete inventory, because the system does not have the intelligence to find out what is obsolete and classify it and get rid of it as quickly as possible, right? This is basically large periodic write-offs also come in place, right? Going back to the example that you provided, Shivam, the mining operations, right? Adding all of these things will actually we are looking at 25 to 35 million at risk, right? With almost 5 million plus in write-offs, which is not a simple petty cash lying around for any COO for that matter, right? So the biggest benefit for the MRO 360 is to the end C-suite, who's the chief operating officer of the particular refinery or of the mining company, to have visibility and help you with all the aspects of information where budgets can be planned properly. Otherwise, the write-offs are going to be huge in number.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about what's coming, because there's been a lot of noise around AI in the market. We have Rakesh and Robert with us from different regions. Rakesh is from Middle East. Robert is from US. So I want to understand the perspective of both of you, understanding of both of you from a different market perspective. What's actually working today versus what's still a promise in terms of AI in EAM. Rakesh, why don't you start?
Yeah, so I'm based out of the Middle East. I live in Dubai. So when I meet people, when I go for events, and when I speak to colleagues in my same category, who are actually working for large organizations, including the Big Fours, the IBMs of the world, the Infosys, Cognizant, and Wipros of the world, right? The unified message that I get is, right, there is always a willingness from the Middle East crowd to embrace AI at an enterprise level, right? But is the enterprise ready for absorbing it? Is the second question that they have to ask even before aspiring to get into the AI bandwagon, and have the internal system and processes fine tuned accordingly, right? One of the biggest things, as we initially started with the discussion, is the fundamental data foundation layer that they have built, and whether they have secured, whether they have governed it properly over the number of years, and it's ready for evolution along with the agentic AI technology that we are bringing on board. So whenever we talk to a prospect also, whenever we do the due diligence with a customer also, what we find that is that particular unified data foundation as well as the missing data information needs to be first of all addressed. And once it is up to a level of 60-75 percentage, then the MRO can actually work on top of it with creating magics around, stock out inventory, safety stock replenishment, inventory optimization, demand planning, and demand forecasting, right? So, and the second one is basically from a enterprise level AI initiation perspective, right? The LLMs have to be made available, right? Those LLMs have to be, there has to be more cloud providers who have to come and give that infrastructure for us, our LLMs to run, so that we can offer this services to larger variety of enterprises and make it more accessible, right? Today, our solution is hosted on AWS, and if most of the government and semi-governments have restrictions in accessing the solutions from the cloud, and either they have to relocate that from a security perspective and give access to that, otherwise, or they have to bring in specified private clouds where things can be actually architected, or they have to give access to the generic clouds where we can run our LLMs and provide these functions back to the enterprises.
Yeah.
Over to
What has been your experience, Robert, in the US? Also, talk about AI adoption in the EM market.
Yeah, I would say it's a bit different, but I'm not gonna say it. It's always better. The U.S. has more mature EAM deployments. I would say, more years of investment, of course, and really more consultants who run these programs. But the maturity cuts both ways. There's significant technical debt from, let's say, 15 years of decisions that nobody wants to revisit. And what Rakesh touched upon, the C-suite alignment on transformations, that's actually stronger, in my opinion, in the Middle East than it is in the U.S. right now. In the U.S., these programs often stall at middle management layers, and it's really not from a technology layer. The sponsorship gap is, a real issue, and it doesn't show up in any RFP or RFI, and really gets, lost in the motion.
Yeah.
I want to add one more point, Shivam, because this is my personal viewpoint, saying that if you are investing in an AI solution, one of the questions that you have to park in your mind is the operational value to be recognized immediately. It will never happen, right? It will happen over a subsequent period of time. So whenever we create a cost benefit analysis for a CXO person to verify, what we typically say that is the first year the savings are going to be very high, because immediately from an inventory optimization perspective, when we cut the flap off and we see the actual visibility, you recognize the savings at one time, right? Then the next question is, do you see the same kind of returns the next year, or it will be more? No, it will be less, because one time cost will be high because immediately you have cut the flap and you have seen the differences. The second year it will be low because you are running an effective operations, and that will only give you slow yieldings. The third year will be higher. It will not be lower than the second year. The third will be higher because you are running a full-fledged, full-time operations on the AI, and the value can be recognized. So the gestation period for an AI solution to work and give you the operational benefit and have the real cost savings derived to the business will anywhere take between 1 to 2 years, right? At an operational level scale, when you are talking about multiple plants, multiple sites, so on and so forth, and irrespective of the vertical also, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's mining, really does not differ.
Yeah. So, Rakesh, for leader who are watching our podcast, who feels they are behind on AI. So, what is the first realistic move, not just a moonshot, as per your understanding?
So first of all, I want to say this loud and clear, saying that AI is not magic, right?
Yeah.
And Yeah, I know Robert is smiling because many people think AI is magic, right? I deploy a LLM a model and start coding against the model for a particular business function. It is going to deliver magic. No, uh, AI fundamentally relies on data, right? Which needs to be clean, organized, managed, and governed. If any of these four paradigms goes for a toss, AI is not going to deliver the desired outcome, or it is not going to realize the cost savings over the period of 3 to 5 year time frame that we're looking at to yield that results, right? So the first thing the C-level suite has to do is to look at how the structure of data is being organized across the enterprise, whether you have a data foundation, a golden record established, and once the even if the golden record is established, you still run a due diligence on how that particular data is being governed, right? And how that data is being enriched. One of the biggest examples I want to tell you is that people try to invest in tools like Informatica, Stevos of the world, and create a unified data framework. They think that that is, done and dusted and let's leave it. No, the governance process, making sure that the agentic AI works along with the governance process and basically goes back to that particular layer of unified data and continuously keep doing that job of making sure that data sanctity is maintained is the most critical thing that the CXO level person has to determine before jumping into the AI bandwagon of building out an AI agentic AI infrastructure, in agentic AI paradigm, and delivering innovation or business value for the entire business over the period of time.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Rakesh. So, Robert, you just mentioned that U.S. market is pretty matured in terms of AI and AI adoption in various sort of technologies, not just EM. So, what's the one thing the U.S. market is doing with AI that rest of the world should be paying attention?
I would say resist the pilot, resist the pilot, resist the pilot. The default move is to, always launch a proof of concept somewhere, show a few results, declare we have success, and then wait for budget approval to expand. And honestly, it's not a strategy. In my opinion, it's a stall. The first real move in an honest diagnostic of any foundation, you have to look at what you have and what has not been working for years. Not a full remediation of a program, just an honest answer. Do we actually know what we have and can we trust it? Because that specific answer is going to determine whether any AI investment is going to compound your value or is it going to crater your value. Start with the foundational assessment and not some algorithmic selection that one of your folks made up 30 minutes before. Take an honest assessment.
Yeah, thank you. So that was quite insightful from both of you. I think one thing that's come through consistently from both of you is that while whole world is excited about AI and digital transformation by leveraging some AI technology, the fundamentals are data quality, asset visibility, and operational discipline still matter more than ever. So before we get into audience questions, let's take a short break from asset hierarchies, spare parts, and AI models, and learn a little more about the people behind the expertise. Robert, Rakesh, no long answers, just your immediate thoughts. If you could automate one thing in your personal life, what would it be?
A personal assistant to manage my calendar
Robert?
just came from the heart.
Well, being that I have 4 kids, I would say something that automates all the busy schedules. Definitely.
But Shubham is a very good question because there is a common paradigm that comes across both in the personal life as well as in the business life, right?
Correct.
Who doesn't like automation? Everybody has to have automation, right? The beautiful concept of agentic AI for that position, you have superior level of automation guided by certain principles, right, which will help your life more secure and manageable. But one caveat that I would like to call out is like when you actually build business grade applications or enterprise grade applications, the
Yeah.
use of AI has to be done ethically, right? We follow ethical practices, and those ethical practices have to be governed over a period of time also, which people are working it in parallel as we speak.
Yeah. So, what is the best piece of career advice you have ever received, Robert, from your side?
Uh, Listen with the intent to understand and not to respond. So many times we listen with the intent to just respond and just throw up on people and not really hear what they're saying. So I would definitely say try to understand from a fundamental level when people are talking, understand what they're saying, understand what they're talking about.
Well, good question. I remember my days back in London as well as in the US. One of the most important things that I carry to display as well as to practice in my life is empathy. Whether it is right or wrong, have the empathy to listen, understand, and learn either from a mistake that you won't repeat in your life, or you learn a better thing to sharpen your life, right? So have the empathy to go along with people and understand their viewpoint, and have your decision made along with them in the right format.
Yeah. Next question. One book,
Shubham,
podcast.
if I could add one more thing, my
Yeah, please.
apologies, and I would be remiss if I didn't say this. But about 15 years ago, I had one of my CEOs. He asked the question to a group of trainees, and he said, "Does anyone know it's 10 to 20 words, but only it's 10 words, but only 20 letters?" I'm like, 10 words, 20 letters. And these were all individual contributors. So, we went around the room, spent about a minute to 2 minutes trying to guess what it was. And it's been now 17 years since I heard this, but he said, if it is to be, it is up to me. Something so succinct, but straight to the point. If it is to be, it is up to me. You have to be willing to make the change. You have to be willing to make the adjustments.
Wow. Thanks for sharing this, Robert. I'm noting it down so I can present in my future interview, I would say, or future podcast. Great line to share with audience. Uh, Question for both of you: one book, podcast, or any person that influenced your thinking recently.
For me, it's been as of recent, a young gentleman out of the UK. He's here in the States now. He has a great podcast, Steve Bartlett. Um, he has a multitude of individuals from all facets of life, but very impressed on how he interviews and the various topics of conversation. If you guys are not following him or reading up on him, I do highly recommend it.
For me, it's continuous learning on a daily basis. Try to learn something new on the AI side, right? I understand. And Shubham, as you're aware, right, I built up a demand sensing application from scratch without zero coding experience, right? That's something I had learned over a period of time. And what I do is typically on a daily basis, whether it's YouTube or whether it's a social media, whether whatever platform can give me some more better insights on AI, I'll try to grab that and have that as part of a systematic updation of the skill sets that I own over the period of time. Yeah.
When Rakesh, when you started answering question, I was thinking about demand sensing only. Me being honest. I was expecting that answer, and thank you. Our
Yeah.
answers are matching. So, last question: what's one metric or indicator you wish more AM leaders paid attention to?
Can you repeat the question again? Sure.
What is the one metric or indicator you wish enterprise asset management leaders from the world should pay attention to?
Robert, you want to go first?
Honestly, I would say the people. More oftentimes than not, I found companies that I've provided evaluations with or visited at various levels. They make decisions based off of their wants and needs and not the actual users. I have a statistic that's stuck in my head. I think it's 73% of EAM or CMMS evaluations don't ever go anywhere once implemented because the end users aren't taken into account. So what I've come to understand and I've come to uncover in every evaluation is, can we get those individuals that are going to be using the application or the system or the platform on a day-to-day basis? We definitely want to get their feedback. That's one thing I would say has been a recurring theme wherever I'm, talking to folks, not taking into account the end users.
For me, Shubham, I think um, considering your enterprise as an organization where you work, you should be very clear about what are the existing processes that the organization follows. That has to be clearly documented. That process definition has to be clear in the mind before you jump into a bandwagon of making decisions for adoption of AI, so on and so forth, right? Also, there has to be a checklist of what are the things that the organization actually has and the organization should have to better the overall experience for their end consumer or for the production of the material that they are actually running the business for, right? That should be the objective. Having this objective and having this reviewed at multiple points of time and making it a solid foundation for the organization with actual documented processes, and then thinking on top of it what are the improvement areas that we can actually implement, and small improvements. And I've seen this, as Robert mentioned, right? I've seen this multiple times in my years, this gungo approach of running large improvement process improvement programs. The success rate is very minimal, right? So you typically take an area with, if you are trying to run an agentic AI process, right? You typically take an area, take that particular, carve out that area, understand the entire fundamentals of that area, have the data documentation done in the proper way fashion, understand the gap analysis, understand the mechanism of how to fill up the gap analysis. Then you choose a particular framework which can be implemented where a quick win can be showcased. I'm not saying about cost. A quick
Yeah.
win can be showcased where the management has a deep belief that this technology would basically, once catapult into the entire organization, would have tremendous value,
Yeah.
right? Those are the things that you should focus upon if you are in this particular segment.
Yeah. Great. Great. I think our audience is asking us some questions. Don't worry, audience. We are taking your questions now only. So yeah, we received very interesting question. Yeah. So question is for both of you. If you were advising the other region, what's one lesson you would bring across?
Oh, uh,
For me, what gets measured gets improved. A lot of times we try to implement systems that are truly complex, or we overshoot the intent. The idea of any implementation, in my opinion, is to implement with the intent to remove human intervention and allow it to replace human response. At the end of the day, especially today with the onset of AI and what it can do, people just want to be able to do their jobs. They want to be able to do it efficiently and effectively. So implementing something that's going to remove human intervention, where people fat finger, typing in something for a work order, or looking for a particular spare part, and really just allow them to respond to the actual action, do their job on a day-to-day basis.
Shivam, can you repeat the question for me?
Yeah. So question was, if you are advising the other region, what's one lesson you would bring across?
Okay, yeah. So if I'm advising the other region, one of the biggest lessons that I would bring across is the uh, the transparency and the visibility of what you currently have, right? So the reason this is a very important thing, because um, one of the things that when we actually do here from a region perspective is when you do a workshop, the customer comes actually prepared, and there is a lot of information that is available, but it's not structured. So we help them structure it and make sure that we build a discipline around it, and then we can make meaningful data out of the whole process, right? Whereas in the other region, which in the US typically, what I have seen, at least from the California region, is you have these CXO level crowd who are extremely in the top of the world, right? Yeah, everybody is a Jeff Bezos, or everybody is this thing. So when you ask some fundamental questions, either they refuse to answer, or they basically say that it's already been done, dusted. So we won't revisit those things. That simplicity and humility is not there in some of the CXOs. I'm not generalizing this, but what I've seen from my past of experiences, that is quite less in the Middle East when compared to the US region.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing this, Rakesh Robert. One more interesting question we have received. I believe this person must be from maintenance background. We are spending more time maintaining the AM than maintaining the equipment. Is that something you are hearing from your customers?
Very good question. I would love to talk to that gentleman, because, yes, in my previous past life, I used to work with a company which used to be a premier partner for IBM Maximo. Right now, Maximo as a system has to be configured properly, and every time the configuration goes for a toss, you typically end up spending more time in fixing Maximo rather than looking at the organizational asset data and deriving operational intelligence out of it, right? So configuration is very, very important, and it takes time. And the other point that I want to tell you is that commercial off the shelf product has huge challenges, including IBM Maximo for that time, like, or similar softwares, right? They come with a boxed mentality approach, right? But every organization is unique, right? The configuration requires an open mindedness, not a open API. It has to have an open mindedness from both the principal as well as the customer to configure a business workflow, integrate that with the master software, and the expectation is the master software can deliver value for that. And this is where the MRO 360 platform is a huge advantage, because it's a completely configurable package that is available for all customers, irrespective of all domains, to configure their workflow accordingly and make sure that you're making the maximum value out of our investment, right? So I really uh, think that the question asked is very relevant. It's a beautiful question, because configuration is a challenge, and in order to have it configured and reconfigured based on the business process flow at the customer side also is a challenge, and that's how they end up managing more time managing the EAM to software rather than the rather than focus on the process improvement of the organization. The answer to that question is to choose open-end softwares with securitized parameters which is quite configurable and which can do the 2 or 3 times more function than the standard EM platforms.
Yeah. About what are your thoughts?
Ironically, Rakesh stated exactly what I was gonna kind of, move to. You want to find a system that you can configure to your business practices and not you having to configure your business practices to the system. So if you have to make what you do fit within the realm of whatever EAM or CMMS application you're evaluating, it's not the application you want. You want something that can be configured according to the way you do things internally.
Yeah. Before taking last question, all those who have joined the podcast, last note from my side, we are offering free proof of concept for all the attendees who are there in the event right now. Guys, you just need to click on the link which is there in comments. This offer is valid only while the podcast is live. Claim your spot before the live session ends. Yeah. I think last question is for no. I think we're done with questions. Yeah. So well, we are almost at a time. So let me leave everyone with few key takeaways from today's discussion. What stood out to me is that EAM is no longer just maintenance function sitting in the background. It's becoming critical driver for reliability, operational performance, inventory optimization, business resilience. The ability to maintain assets effectively depends not only on maintenance strategies, but also on having the right spare parts, processes, and visibility across the operations, I would say. And while there's a lot of excitement, noise around AI, companies seeing the greatest value are the ones applying it to real operational challenges, improving reliability, reducing downtime, reducing their annual spend, average spend, optimizing inventory, helping teams to make better decisions faster. Rakesh, Robert, thank you both of you for sharing your insights and experiences from different regions and industries. It's been fantastic discussion. I really enjoyed it, and I hope audience also enjoyed it. We really enjoyed the questions from audience as well. Thank you to everyone who joined us today and contributed questions throughout the session. If you would like to continue the conversation, we will be sharing the recording and additional resources after the webinar. Thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at future Vadantis events. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you. See you.
Thank you all. Thank
Thank
you
you.
all for your time. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Shubham. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone.